Alright, let's dive into this icy battle. We're thrown right into the thick of it, with Wolverine, in his classic blue and yellow, locked in a desperate struggle. He's ensnared by thick, glowing orange coils that are crackling with energy. The coils are wrapped tight, squeezing his torso and arms, clearly causing him immense pain. He's roaring, his face contorted in rage and agony, as his claws, now extended, try to find purchase to break free. His other hand raises a shining blade, poised to cut through the constricting coils. Facing him is another figure, similarly suited but in a darker, more menacing black and gold. It's the Constrictor. He's snarling just as fiercely, his sharp teeth bared, eyes glowing with a cruel intensity, clearly the one responsible for this constricting chaos. The air around them is filled with falling snow, and shards of rock fly through the air from the impact of the struggle. The title looms above Wolverine, and below it, and the coils of the Constrictor. This showdown is going to be intense. Okay, we're shifting gears here. We zoom in on a furious Wolverine, bare-chested, sweat glistening on his brow, and a deep, guttural yell escaping his lips. "My name is Logan," he roars, the red tone of the scene matching the fire in his eyes. The scene jumps to a flashback, or maybe a hallucination, where we see Wolverine grappling with a monstrous, pale, fur-covered creature with glowing red eyes and sharp tusks. This is a Wendigo, a beast of legend. Wolverine is locked in a struggle, his face contorted in effort as he grips the creature's head. A voice bubble near his head demands, "Say it." The Wendigo, in turn, snarls, "Wendigo." The final panel in this sequence snaps back to Wolverine, face still bright red and roaring with rage. He's locked in an invisible struggle, or maybe it is the real one, his muscles taut as he yells, "No, Logan." He's fighting something inside of him, some beastly urge, while another bubble repeats the demand, "Say it." It's a psychological battle as much as physical, and the tension is palpable. He's not just fighting a Wendigo, he's fighting his identity. Alright, so we're diving deeper into this bizarre training session. We see Wolverine, still grappling with the Wendigo, this time in a forest clearing with a jeep and a log cabin visible in the background. He's telling the beast, "I know you can talk. I've heard you use words, and I ain't letting you backslide." He's trying to force the creature to reclaim its humanity, and we see a yellow thought bubble explaining his mission. "I'm trying to teach the Wendigo, a cursed halfdan monster that eats human flesh, how to be a person again." But a smaller thought bubble from him declares, "It ain't going great." In the next panel, Wolverine is still wrestling with the Wendigo, struggling to maintain control. Another yellow bubble states, "I've been a teacher more than once in my life. It's hard work. Harder than fighting is by a country mile." He seems almost defeated as he thinks, "Can't say I ever quite got the hang of it." It's clear this task is pushing him to his limits, and the sheer frustration is apparent. But then, we jump to a montage of Wolverine continuing his struggle, pushing the Wendigo. "Come on, Kid Logan." The yell comes as he pushes. A yellow panel says, "But sometimes." Then we see, as they're grappling again, the Wendigo finally, tentatively, says, "Lodigan." In a speech bubble. The final panel of this page shows them still grappling, the Wendigo looking down, now having spoken with a different tone, and we get a final yellow bubble that says, "The work pays off." It's a small victory, but it's a breakthrough, and it gives us a look at the depth of the problem. Logan is trying to help this creature find his own humanity. It's tough, but it's also hopeful. Okay, time for a breather, at least for a moment. Wolverine and the Wendigo, now referred to as Leonard, are taking a break in the forest clearing. Wolverine, still shirtless, crotches and says, "Close enough." Then, turning to the exhausted beast, he adds, "Let's give it a rest for today, Leonard." A yellow thought bubble pops up as Wolverine stands up, stating, "Gotta remember to say the kid's name more. Nothing reminds us of who we are like names." In the next panel, Leonard appears to be calming down as a thought bubble states, "This Wendigo has held on to his humanity better than most grown men I've seen consumed by the curse." We see that the beast still has some vestiges of the boy he once was, and Wolverine is working hard. Wolverine is now wiping himself off with a white cloth as we get another yellow bubble. The harder he works at fighting back the hunger for human flesh, the more the hunger seems to recede. And it's almost like the curse is meeting him halfway. It looks like their work is paying off. We now see him putting on a clean white shirt, and the thoughts change to, I've seen mutagenic transformation, shape-shifting spells, you name it. And then, if I know one thing, I know that screw-up teenager Leonard is still trapped inside that beast. He is not going to give up on him. The final panel is a close-up of Wolverine's blue eye, filled with a deep sadness and resolve. He thinks, I know too damn well what that feels like to just leave him to his fate. Wolverine sees himself in Leonard's struggle, and he's not going to leave him to suffer the same way he did. There's so much packed into this moment of quiet contemplation. He's not just training a monster, he's fighting his own demons through Leonard's transformation. Alright, let's see what Wolverine's been up to while he's not wrestling with the Wendigo. We see him in a series of panels swinging an axe with brutal efficiency in the forest clearing. He's wearing a simple plaid shirt and blue jeans, looking like he could be chopping wood for a normal day. He's thinking, so instead, I've decided to help a damaged kid break an ancient curse while keeping him from eating everyone he meets. He admits with a thought bubble, not the brightest idea, but nobody's ever accused me of being a genius. He's definitely making this up as he goes along. Another thought bubble reveals, things in Canada got a little hot, so 2 days ago, we discreetly crossed into the States. We get some more background information in the following panels. He's hauling a freshly chopped log and thinking, harder to do these days with all the cameras and drones and whatnot, but it's still a big border. He finishes with, and I'm sneaky. Another thought bubble tells us Whole-timer who rented me the cabin took cash and didn't he ask questions. Lucked out there, not a lot of that type left. Even let me use his old Jeep. It looks like he had a few lucky breaks. The panels move as Wolverine continues to work. He looks thoughtful as he swings an axe into the log. He thinks, been a quiet few days since then, if we're lucky. But we don't get the rest as his axe comes down with a massive "fa-boom" that sends wood flying, and his thoughts go to, man, my big mouth. It looks like he may have jinxed himself. Something is about to go down. Okay, things have definitely escalated. We're immediately hit with a massive scene of a towering inferno, plumes of black smoke and flames raging against the backdrop of a mountain. Wolverine, in his plaid shirt, is looking at the blaze, a look of concern on his face. A thought bubble says, well, that ain't-y good. He realizes it's not just a normal forest fire, mostly truckers using that road. I figure a nasty accident caused something one of them was hauling to explode, he thinks. Then the focus shifts to a close-up of his face, and we see him sniffing the air as the word snuff is written in bold letters. He's using his heightened senses, and a thought bubble reveals, until the wind brings me the residual scent of military explosives. This is definitely not just a random accident. The tension is high, and it seems our quiet respite is over. This is bad news for Wolverine and Leonard. They have just run into something much bigger than they planned. Alright, Wolverine's taking stock of the situation, and it's not looking good. Inside the rustic cabin, we see a silhouette of Wolverine in the doorway, bathed in sunlight, and a radio scanner next to it. A thought bubble states, no TV here. The Koja listened to a radio scanner for his entertainment. Another says, local cops are podonk enough that they're still transmitting unencrypted. And a final one says, been using the thing to make sure a dragnet doesn't swoop down on us, but it's been damn near silent. Then, we focus on the radio scanner, the screen displaying High Ridge Ard accident danger, before changing to High Ridge Road Bapst attacked by Bzit, please help. Anyone, this is a distress call, a new yellow bubble says, until now. We see a close-up of Wolverine lying on a cot. He has a grim look on his face, a yellow bubble stating, anyone, the man said. He is now packing his yellow and blue suit, and he thinks to himself, I ain't like Spider-Man or Captain America. He's not a hero who rushes in for the sake of heroics, he thinks. No poor innocent in trouble pictures the Wolverine coming to their rescue. Then he pauses, and with resolve we hear him think, but when folks are desperate enough to plead for someone, anyone to help. The final panel is a shot of Wolverine fully suited in his classic uniform, his claws extended with a snikt as they come out. He snarls as he says, well, I'm anyone. Wolverine is done running, he is going into the fire. It looks like he has to be a hero after all. Okay, we're back with Wolverine and Leonard, but this time it's a little more chaotic. Wolverine, now suited up, is addressing the Wendigo before heading into the trouble. Leonard, listen up. I gotta head out for a minute. You need to hide, he says. You remember what we practiced, hide? He asks. The Wendigo replies, Wendigo, not yet quite understanding. Wolverine heads out of the cabin. A yellow bubble reveals his thoughts. I don't love leaving the Wendigo here alone. But I can't risk bringing him into whatever bloody chaos is going on. We then see a panel of a Wendigo eating what appears to be a carcass. Blood smeared around his face, but Wolverine continues. So I leave him to focus on his lunch, and despite the horror movie visuals, I almost smile. He knows that Leonard is making progress, his thought bubble stating, something's definitely shifting inside the kid. 2 days ago, he showed zero interest in meat that wasn't two-legged. He's happy that they're making progress, and he continues to think. What I'm doing's making a difference. Then we get a panel of Wolverine with his mask, and he has a look of slight pride on his face as he thinks, no matter how old and cynical I get, that always feels good. Wolverine is now climbing into the Jeep, and he calls to the beast Wendigo. He asks and Leonard answers, no, Wendistay, to which he replies, and practice hide till I get back. It seems they have an understanding now, and it is time for Wolverine to face the coming chaos. Hopefully, he will be able to save them all. Okay, we're on the move. Moments later, the page begins, setting the scene. We see a chaotic and destroyed landscape. Tactical SUVs and a secured transport truck are all wrecked and burning. Dead guards are lying on the ground. A yellow thought bubble tells us, tactical SUVs, secured transport truck, dead uniformed guards. Another explains, until somebody blew it to bits, this was a prisoner transfer convoy. The situation is dire. A panel shows a side view of the inside of the transport vehicle where it's clear a prisoner was held, and a yellow bubble states, for a heavy-duty prisoner from the looks of it. And whoever it is has already flown the coop. A close-up of Wolverine crouching near the wreckage. He is taking in the scene. Another bubble explains, I try to catch a scent through the olfactory haze of smoke and oil and blood. The next panel is a close-up of Wolverine's face. We see that he is sniffing the air as the letters "Sunf" are repeated. He thinks, but a subtle, stinging scent stops me cold. A whisper-thin scent I literally know in my bones. And in a final bubble, Hodamantium. The tension jumps up another level. In a final panel, Wolverine is crouched, clearly agitated by his discovery. The hell, he exclaims as he crouches, ready for action. It seems Wolverine has just walked into a setup, and things just got a whole lot more personal. Alright, things are exploding literally and figuratively now. We are immediately thrown into an action scene. We see a metal rod exploding out of the ground with a crush, with a speech bubble cursing, "Cole, give me a centab break." In another panel we see a metal coil flinging itself back, and here, the Sen Wolverine, really. In the center of the page, bathed in an orange and red glow of the inferno, stands the Constrictor, looking furious, arms spread wide, his metal coils twisting around him. He's screaming, I swear, you bastards can't let a guy have anything. We see the dead guards all around him. He is clearly upset about what has happened. This is a full-blown confrontation, and it is clear the Constrictor is not happy to be interrupted. The stage is set for an explosive battle. Alright, let's dive into the Constrictor's rant. The panels zoom in on him. He is clearly in the middle of explaining his escape. Like, some nice, connected folks sneak messages to me in the joint offering to spring me during transfer, he explains. And of course one of you Centaur heroes has to show up and ruin it, he yells. He seems very put out. Truck goes boom, I kill the guards easy peasy, everything's looking great. He says, it's demoralizing's what it is, he cries. He's still not done. He yells out, what are you even doing here? Anyway, Heinty or Umuti's supposed to be on an island somewhere. He shouts. He clearly has some strong feelings about Wolverine and his fellow mutants. In the final panel of the page we focus on Wolverine. His face is set in a grimace, and a single word escapes his lips. Bub. He's not having any of the Constrictors ranting. It's time for action. Okay, the fight is officially on. Wolverine has heard enough, and he yells, stop talking, as he jumps into the fight. The Constrictor is swinging his metal coils towards Wolverine, who dodges the attack. A yellow thought bubble from Wolverine says, Dirtbag calls himself Constrictor. In the next panel, the Constrictor's coil hits Wolverine's jaw with a loud whom. As Wolverine thinks, how'd I know better than anyone how 100% bad adamantium can hurt? Another yellow thought bubble explains, not exactly Doctor Doom level, but the coils attached to his arms are adamantium. Then we see the impact of the blow on Wolverine. He clutches his head in pain, and he thinks, I'm distracted. Worried the Wendigo's gonna catch the scent of blood and rush up here. It's slowing me down. The Constrictor continues to attack him and thinks, you brought this on yourself, freak. You could have just left well enough alone. Finally, Wolverine, despite being dazed, pops out his claws with a resounding snit snit. He is snarling and says, I ain't so good at that. Lem show you what I am good at. The fight is not over, it's just getting started. Okay, we're in the thick of the action now. We see Wolverine and Constrictor battling, metal clanging against claws. The Constrictor is yelling, Gee. As Wolverine slices him across the chest, there is a loud slash sound. In the next panel, the Constrictor is yelling, Grah, as he and Wolverine punch at each other with the scree and ha of impact. The fight spills onto the wreckage. The Constrictor is thrown against a vehicle. He yells, Hey, Mun, I said I give up, please. As his coil goes flying in the air. It's not going to be that easy. Wolverine, teeth bared in a snarl, yells back, Grah, as he slams his claws into the metal casing of the transport truck right near the Constrictor. He's not buying the Constrictor's pleas, and the Constrictor stammers, Oh God, oh, old, dunt. In the final panel of the page, we see Wolverine stab the Constrictor in the neck with his claw, a big shunk, sound punctuating the violent act. The Constrictor is silent. He staggers and falls to the ground with a slump. This is a brutal, nonsense fight, and Wolverine clearly means business. Alright, the dust is settling and the aftermath is grim. The Constrictor is lying on the ground with a breathy pant, while Wolverine stands above him and a yellow bubble states, Constrictor's passed out from shock, but he'll live. Wolverine thinks to himself, that's good. Then, looking to the ground, he muses, was out in the woods for a while. Need to keep reminding myself that I can hold back the animal in me. He seems to be in control again, at least for now. In the final panel of the page, Wolverine is touching a small, glowing device on his glove, and two more yellow bubbles appear as he touches the device. Kinda safe to contact the authorities right now, seeing as Leonard and I were caught up in a manhunt not too long ago. And a final bubble that says, so I call a friend, though I don't much feel like talking. It's time to call in some backup, but it's clear Wolverine is still conflicted by the violence he just committed. This is not over, it seems, but the tide has turned, for the moment. Okay, time for a little teamwork. Wolverine is calling a friend. On one side we see Wolverine, on the other, we see Nightcrawler in a kitchen wearing a yellow apron with a large X on it, a glass of wine and some vegetables on the counter. Clearly, he was in the middle of dinner. Wolverine's dialogue begins with, Nightcrawler, you there? And Nightcrawler answers, Jay, Wolverine, you've been missed. What's up? Wolverine is in the middle of the destruction, a panel showing his back to the fire. He is speaking into a device that is transmitting to Nightcrawler, he says, sending coordinates. Got Constrictor here, KOD and bleeding. He needs a heavy-duty security detail and an ambulance. Nightcrawler is looking at something on the counter and he replies, no problem, I'll handle it. But Nightcrawler is now looking directly at Wolverine, his finger in the air as he says, you alright? Your voice, frowned it, but Wolverine cuts him off. I'm fine, elf. Just need a favor. Nightcrawler sighs sigh. Then, very well, I'll talk to you soon. The focus shifts back to Wolverine. We see the fire is still burning and he is standing in front of the wreckage. He thinks, the fight's over, my adrenaline starts to come down. But then, we focus back on his face. We see him sniffing the air with snuff, snuff in bold letters, he thinks. But then, I catch a scent that makes it skyrocket, and in a final yellow bubble, missed it at first beneath all the smoke and oil and blood, but now it's unmistakable. It's the scent. The page is left on a cliffhanger. Wolverine has sensed something new, and whatever it is raising his hackles. Okay, a new player has entered the game, and she's a formidable one. The scene shifts to Lady Deathstrike. A woman with piercing eyes and a deadly katana and a yellow bubble tells us, Yuriko Oyama, aka Lady Deathstrike. She looks ready for a fight. Another bubble explains, a father invented the process that bonds adamantium to bone. Yet another yellow bubble states, of someone who won't stop coming after me until I'm dead. Wolverine is clearly aware of who this is. A panel shows him glaring with a yellow bubble explaining the process that was forced on me. And then, but she still considers me a thief whose existence spits on her father's grave. Another bubble reminds us, she's tried to kill me more times than I can count. But she's different today. Sense off, but I can't say how. Finally, we see a full shot of Wolverine. He is now fully on guard and calling out, Deathstrike, what the hell is this? What are you doing here? The tension is palpable. This is not going to be a friendly chat. It is clear that Lady Deathstrike has a history with Wolverine, and this new encounter is raising even more questions. Okay, the confrontation is underway. Lady Deathstrike doesn't respond to Wolverine's questions, and instead, she immediately attacks, and a yellow bubble says. She answers with her sword, which I expect. We see her in mid-swing, going for Wolverine's throat. We get a different yellow bubble, but Deathstrike is always full of speeches and proclamations. This strong, silent stuff ain't her. Her silence is a red flag for Wolverine. The next panel shows Deathstrike flipping through the air to attack with her sword. Another thought bubble says, she's as lethal as ever, but she's never this quiet. It's clear that this is different. She is not acting as he expected. A final bubble explains, then she pops her adamantium talons and we now see the claws as she attacks again. In the final panel we see Lady Deathstrike's face as her eyes glow with a strange yellow light. It's an unsettling image. Another yellow bubble states, this isn't the enemy I know. This is not Lady Deathstrike as Wolverine knows her, something has happened to her and he knows it. Alright, the fight is raging and it seems like Deathstrike has the upper hand. Wolverine yells, what the hell? As he is thrown backwards by the attack, he is clearly off guard as he says, you get an upgrade or. In the next panel, we see Lady Deathstrike slam into Wolverine with a loud hump and he grunts, He is clearly in pain. A yellow thought bubble from Wolverine states, Lady Deathstrike's a warrior. She's always been able to give me a run for my money when we've tangled. Then, but this is different. Something more. And something stronger. He is worried that she is not just stronger, but something else entirely. A panel shows Wolverine grabbing his head in pain. He is confused by what is happening. He looks down and we see another yellow bubble, hot of the corner of my eye. I see her lift Constructor's prone body. It seems that Lady Deathstrike is not just going after him. Then, in the final panel, Wolverine is shocked. He has seen something horrific. He yells in anguish as another yellow bubble states. But after that, I don't know what the hell I'm seeing. It seems she is not working alone and has something planned. The stakes have just gone up again. Okay, this is getting crazy. We see a panel of the Constrictor, now covered in a black and gold web-like substance, his mouth wide open, and a loud archer coming out of him. Lady Deathstrike is behind him, and a thought bubble states, what in the hell is she doing to him? The next panel shows Lady Deathstrike turning away from the Constrictor and a yellow bubble explains. Deathstrike turns back to me, and I'm ready for round 2. We see Wolverine, claws extended, ready for another fight. But then things shift. A panel shows Deathstrike facing Wolverine and a yellow bubble states, but she doesn't attack. Another explains. Instead, she finally opens her mouth and speaks. Then in the final panel, a close-up of Deathstrike's face, her eyes still glowing yellow, and we are told, Conley it ain't her voice that comes out. Whatever is controlling her, it is not Deathstrike. The mystery has deepened and the stakes have risen. We are getting closer to finding out who is behind this, but it is not going to be easy. Okay, things are getting very strange here. We are now focused on Lady Deathstrike's face. Her eyes glowing with that unnerving yellow light, and a speech bubble that is not her usual voice, it is deep and strange, says, you are deafened by the screeching of the false metal within you. The scene shifts to show Wolverine and Lady Deathstrike, and the voice continues, you have not yet heard the call of the adamantine. Wolverine is now on guard, unsure of what is going on, as he says, "The call of the what?" "I Amazon, what have you gotten?" Lady Deathstrike raises a hand, her fingers curved in a specific motion, and the voice that is not her voice continues. "It will speak to you, if you will only listen." But the final panel focuses tightly on Wolverine's eyes, which have now started to glow as well. The glowing is accompanied with his scream of "Haga." The story is about to change, it seems, and Wolverine is in the middle of it. This is not Lady Deathstrike, it seems, but something else has control of her, and Wolverine is starting to change as well. Okay, we've reached the end of the chapter, and things have gotten seriously intense. We see the top of Wolverine's head with a golden crown-like structure and tendrils creeping down. A yellow thought bubble tells us, "That voice that isn't he Deathstrike's rings in my ears for an impossibly long moment." But another panel shows a closer look at the golden structure that is now around Wolverine's head, and he thinks. Then it becomes something else cold. Metallic sound calling to me. The voice seems to be changing. His thoughts are moving beyond the voice of Lady Deathstrike. It's not mind control or telepathy. Feels older. Primal. He is trying to understand what is happening to him, the source of the voice. Then, feels so ancient I can hear the passing of ages. The source of what is happening is much older than he imagined. The final panel is a close-up of Wolverine's face, and below we see a skeleton with a single glowing eye. Tendrils seem to be coming up from it. A final yellow bubble, and Wolverine explains, "I've got good ears. I can always tell where a sound is coming from." Then, just before I pass out, I realize that ancient primal presence. He understands the sound, and that it is coming from a strange source. A final bubble tells us, "Is coming from my own bones." And with that terrifying realization, we are told, "To be continued." This is a wild ride, and it looks like Wolverine is not just facing external enemies, but something that is part of him, something ancient, and it is now being awakened. Whatever is going on, it is not going to be easy. Thanks for tuning in. Stay curious, stay awesome, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more amazing content.